What's up, everyone? Welcome to my corner of the internet. I'm your host, Ryan Kramer, and this is Crossover Commerce, presented by Ping Pong Payments, the leading global payments provider helping sellers keep more of their hard-earned money. Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Crossover Commerce. I'm your host, Ryan Kramer, and this is my corner of the internet where I bring the best and brightest in the Amazon and e-commerce space. This is episode 242 of Crossover Commerce, presented by Ping Pong Payments. A quick shout out to our presenting sponsor. Ping Pong Payments is helping more sellers keep more of their hard-earned money, whether it's being sending payments to their suppliers, manufacturers, your VAs, your employees worldwide, or if you're growing on Amazon. This is the year I think a lot of sellers are going to be looking at moving into maybe Canada or Mexico or Australia or Japan, wherever you might be growing. It doesn't have to just be on Amazon. It could be other marketplaces as well. We are going to be helping you save more of your money when you convert those funds back to your local bank account. So go and check out usa.pingpongx.com/podcast. That's where you'll catch all of our past episodes, 241 of them. This is 242, so this one won't be there yet. All past episodes where you can watch and listen to our past episodes, as well as signing up for a free Ping Pong account today. Thank you, Ping Pong Payments, for sponsoring Crossover Commerce. That being said, if you are watching this on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, thanks for joining us today on another beautiful day. I jokingly say this is a packed week. Not a joke, actually. It's 5 days in a row. We're going to have a podcast where we're going to be talking with experts in the field of Amazon in different capacities, right? We want to make sure that everyone can have different topics and be aware of different things that we're going on. That's the beauty of Crossover Commerce, is we've talked anything from sourcing, logistics, marketing, advertising, localization, global growth, all the way to what marketplaces and roundtables are going to be successful for you in that year. So with that being said, you've hit the right place. If you're a past listener, thanks for coming back. Or if you're new, go ahead and let us know that you're listening for the first time in the comment section below. We see those. We can throw them up on the screen. If you have a question for myself or our guest, that's always a great way to put it as well. We'll make sure we get those answered live. Or if you catch us on a different time, we'll make sure that we get those answered and tag you in it as well. So that being said, every episode I make people, this is something that's true. I make people before they come on, they kind of give me a little bit of a pitch. This is because you go on 240 something episodes, people start now to pitch ideas if they want to come on the podcast. If I don't invite them, they kind of give me an idea of what they want to talk about. So I always have to vet, green light, make sure people are going to bring great value for you, the listener. That's my job for you. But also I want to bring on really cool people too. People who've seen the world, who've seen the landscape kind of evolve from this infancy age all the way to it's go through its teen kind of awkward years of growth, maybe growth too quickly, and kind of can see where they're going to be as they mature down the road too. And I think we have one of those guests today. I wasn't telling him how I'd introduce him today because this is how I kind of see how this is going to go today. I'm really excited to bring Gregory Elfrink of Empire Flippers on, and he's seen the industry in the aggregation space kind of grow from its infancy all the way up to its kind of awkward growth, hyper growth stage, and maybe we're hitting maybe the back end of it, and that's why we titled today's episode, "Is this the end of the season of the seller?" And that's what we mean by this title. Is it the end of the ridiculous multiples? Is this the end of, hey, I'm going to be able to exit, no problem, I'm going to have multiple bidders for my brand? Is this the end? I don't know. We'll find out today. So, like I mentioned before, brought on Gregory from Empire Flippers today, all the way from Philippines, to talk with us on Crossover Commerce Day. Gregory, thank you so much for hopping on Crossover Commerce in my corner of the internet.
Yeah. Thanks for the introduction. I feel like I'm blushing from all the kind words you just said.
No, you're not.
I'm actually I'm in Vietnam though, over the Philippines.
Vietnam. I said Philippines. I'm sorry. That's my fault.
No,
we
no
talked about
worries.
this pre-show. So everyone in so yeah, exactly. That is completely my fault. But yeah, this is true. I don't know how I came up with that awkward growth stage of being a preteen or something like that. Maybe my 7-year-olds kind of spurred me on. It's like this weird, awkward stage of now you're seeing some weird stuff happening and growing so quickly out of clothes and stuff like that. But man, you've seen it all. I feel like you've You're employee number 4 at Empire Flippers. I'll let you tell the story because you know your background better than I do. But I want to hear how you got to Empire Flippers. Have you always been in e-commerce? End of all my berating of questions for you.
Excellent. Yeah, so my background is a bit unique, I'd say. So before EF, I was in Alaska. That's where I'm born and raised, is in Anchorage, Alaska. And I was an oil field roughneck. So I was drilling for oil, covered in chemicals, wearing the Darth
Really?
Vader rubber suit. Yeah, it was great. It was very similar to e-commerce. But I hated it, and I self-taught myself internet marketing and got out of that and ended up joining up with EF when we were a very, very small company. I was employee number 4, like you mentioned, and back then, or this is like 6 years ago. I just celebrated 6 years a few weeks ago at EF.
Congrats.
And yeah, thank you. Back then, there was like we all fit into this Airbnb in Vietnam or wherever we went around the world because we're a digital nomad company. And back then, also FBA wasn't even really a thing. Like it was starting to become a thing. I think it was like 6 months into my career at EF that FBA became a thing. And I remember, and I'm pretty sure we were the very first ones to ever sell an Amazon FBA business because like Amazon didn't know you could do that. So we had to like talk to them over and over again about like, yes, you can legally sell an Amazon business. Or like, no,
So
you can't sell
Amazon,
accounts. That's fraudulent. Like, no, no, no.
they reached out to you and they said, "Can you guys actually do this?" They were questioning you and thought that was they didn't know if it was legitimate or not.
So what ended up happening is we ended up selling them, and we were telling Amazon, "Well, hey, we're selling them because we wanted to be transparent, right?" And they're like, "Oh, you can't sell an account." It's like, "Great, we're not selling an account. We're selling a business asset." It's like,
Sure.
"What?" And so they were very confused. Eventually, they got us up to like higher levels of management at Amazon, and we told them the deal, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, no, this isn't fraudulent," because that was their big concern, right? It's like we don't want fraudulent accounts, all this kind of stuff. People selling black hat accounts, whatever. So yeah, Amazon didn't even know that was a possibility. So we've seen this ride all the way from the very beginning to where we're at now, and it's been a hell of a ride. It's been amazing how much things have grown and matured over the years.
That's amazing, man. Well, that's funny that you mentioned that Amazon didn't know that this was a thing, which is kind of funny in how it kind of came quickly. You said maybe what this was back in 2016, 17 or so, if we're doing math,
Mhm.
which excuse me, if we're talking about just the basics of it, as when FBA was really taking off. We call it the quote you call it. I know you call it too. The Wild West days of Amazon, when kind of like everything was acceptable. How to you just had to be one step ahead of the next seller, and people didn't understand that it was not just a business year for me. You weren't selling widgets. You weren't just like this reseller. You were now becoming a brand, and you guys had that focus. So, what was it like, kind of taking a chance on something that wasn't really yet formed, or an idea or an industry really formed yet, and you kind of are here today, and you kind of see this ridiculous growth over the past couple of years.
Sure. Yeah. So I think one thing that people forget about nowadays about us is that we sell any online business, not just FBA, right? So we've sold DDC, commerce, Shopify, Magento stores, Shopify apps, iPhone apps, Android apps, affiliate sites. The weirdest business that we sell, in my opinion, is KDP businesses. So people who like write a bunch of books with ghostwriters and they have this whole like publishing system and then they sell that. So we've always been kind of on the cutting edge of these new business models, and we're a fan of digital businesses. We only sell digital businesses, so it made perfect sense to us with how many friends we had in the space doing FBA for us to sell FBA businesses. And we like most business models, you start off with low multiples. Because no one really understands the model yet, like they don't get the business yet, so it hasn't matured in the buyer's eyes. But then over time, we know it just grows from there. So
Right.
yeah, we were happy to jump into the leap into it. And we were, like I said, we were one of the first. And I still remember this kind of funny story. We had this seller. He was asking us like, why should he go with us over this other broker? And our salesperson at the time, he took a screenshot of the other broker's website of the businesses that they sell, and it said Amazon FBA coming soon. I was like, well, that might be the first like indication that you might want to go with us over them.
If you're selling an FBA business and yeah, that's what they're promoting, FBA coming soon. That's not a good
Yeah,
sign.
right.
Not a lot of
Yeah.
experience there. Well, interesting. So yeah, so with the model, I think it's interesting because you're selling a lot more than just FBA businesses, right? Of there you said like affiliate sites, there's blogs, there's things of value. And the value is different for each business. So there's traffic, there's revenue, there's income resources. I'm assuming that that's kind of where the whole model comes. You're semi brokering or allowing people to see what's available for sale, not like a used car lot or anything like that, but almost like a very much a hey, people are trying to they can't grow it anymore. They want to just move on with it. And entrepreneurs at heart always want to take advantage of good opportunity. So this is where I'm assuming Empire Flippers kind of came about. So why has it been the focus on FBA mainly, or have you guys been pretty easily diverse, or does it kind of just ebb and flow with the times in your time there?
Yeah, so I would say it's a mix. It's a mixed bag. When I first came on board, I would say affiliate sites and like new media sites or monetized through say display ads were by far our bread and butter. That was our main thing we sold. Now it's switched where FBA is by far the main thing we sold. We still sell tons of affiliate websites, tons of those media websites and with smattering of other business models as well. But FBA has definitely become a dominant player. I think part of that is because of how early we were. So we kind of figure out all the processes that you need to do before before anyone else really came to the table. That give us a lot of advantage there. And to your point on the marketplace side, so like with EF, like we yes, we have a marketplace, but we are more similar to like an M&A advisory at this point than like a traditional marketplace kind of setup. Like
Yeah, sure.
I just went through an actual M&A an actual M&A advisory thing with someone who's like more old school and like I just looked at that process like, man, you should really use our process for this. Yours is much more antiquated than what we do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's so many different businesses that came right in 2020, 2021, really last year, and I think even still cropping up today. There's either brokers or there's there's quote unquote aggregators, and they're all size too, right? There are people who want to only stay. I want to run 3 brands or 5 brands. I had a call with a person like that, and he was asking my advice and said a mutual friend or a friend in the space, and he goes, is this something that you think there's still opportunity? I said, I think there is always going to be opportunity. It just depends on the model and if you know Amazon or where you want to really focus on. So I know that there's like big scale crazy names that are like the Thracias, the Perches, the Empire Flippers, or the Empire Flippers, and then the Elevate brands, so on and so forth, based upon money raised. Why has it been such a time, or I would say, like, why did we see this rise all of a sudden quickly? And then obviously, I think there's this weird, awkward gap right now that's like a wait and see moment, like a weird
Yeah.
who's gonna blink first or who's going to like say the next thing. Why are we at where we are today?
I think that's a great insight into like kind of what's happening right now. But yeah, the origin of all of this, like so we started selling FBA back in 2016. I think it was around 2018, towards the end of 2018 that Thrasio came around, if I remember right. But
Yeah,
before Thrasio came around, like Thrasio is often heralded as the first aggregator, right? But that's not actually true. We sold to aggregators before Thrasio, it's just they all failed. So they never
yeah,
got like scaled or hype or stuff like that. And it wasn't like some of the aggregators didn't do FBA, they were doing other stuff like affiliate sites, for example. But we always knew like, look, this is a powerful model. It makes sense to do this roll up kind of model with what an aggregator can do. Eventually, someone's going to figure it out, and they're going to really knock it out of the park once they do. And then Thrasio came along and did it. So Thrasio is the real trailblazer in that sense. I kind of feel like they're almost like all the aggregators are like our children because Thrasio like originally started buying
they're
all
the
the
firstborn.
businesses from us. Yeah, like the firstborn, and all the other siblings came along, afterwards. But they grow up so fast
I
that we
know
have like four unicorn
they're so
status
damn
clients.
expensive too. dude.
Right.
No,
But yeah, so I say Thrasio was the trailblazer, and then everyone just started following Thrasio. And I remember it got to this heated pitch where this is probably like, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, something like that. I remember having this aggregator on our podcast, the Opportunity Podcast, and my the person that hosts it for me, she asked them like, "Hey, do you mind if I ask you about some of our secret sauce?" Or some of your secret sauce that makes your aggregator like really work, right? And he's like, of course. I mean, everyone knows what to do. Thrasio tells everyone what to do. And what's hilarious about that is we just had Thrasio on, and he had said like, I can't tell you the secret sauce because everyone's going to copy me. I'm like, wow, you got that right.
it's
So it was pretty funny.
well, that's the thing too, and like I watch this, and I'm probably like you, a social listener, right? You want to get the whole picture instead of just one person's picture, because some person can be a really good salesperson. And again, I've had so many of them on the podcast. I consider a lot of them friends of the industry and the business, and I think they're really smart people. But if you can get a really good salesperson in there, you can sell the idea of almost anything. And again, I think that's the concept of why there's so many that businesses that kind of came quickly, is because, oh, they can do it, well, I can do it better, or there's always like one up
uh,
mentality. But then also, you're right, it's not that big of a secret. What aggregators do and what's successful is very much a hard thing to do, but it may be more simple than a lot of people thought. And I think that's kind of this like this whole thing in place of, if you have people and processes in place, you know what you're doing, you've been able to do it themselves. I think that's separating the people who are still buying businesses and are still operating today, and you have people who, like a Factory 14, had to or just decided to remove themselves from operations and sold all their assets to uh, Razor Group, if I remember correctly, which happened as of last week, and it was very quiet. It went on Business Insider, and it was a nationally thing, but it was, you know, it wasn't as talked about as much, and I thought it would be more talked about. And a lot of people expect this to happen.
uh,
A lot of people thought this would happen, but now it is happening. Now a lot of people are not clamoring as much as I thought. But so in this, they grew up so fast. Man, this took off and then went down and went up again, and then now we're here, and against this awkward, weird space of people are still claiming they're buying and selling. People are putting on pause. They're just radio silent. There's like no marketing, no nothing.
yeah.
What happened?
Yeah, so I guess so we have to take a couple steps back,
Yeah,
right? So once Thrasio approved the model and created all the hype, what started happening is other people wanted to get in on it, right? So other people started raising the money, raising debt from private equity or yeah, private equity, family offices, so forth,
sure.
to start buying these businesses, right? And it all looked so easy because a lot of like this is one of the things I think aggregators did really wrong. I don't think Thrasio did this. I think a lot of aggregators did though. Is a lot of their background comes from high finance, like M&A, high finance kind of background, not from scrappy entrepreneurs, which is probably what you and I are more like, Ryan. Like we just start stuff and like figure it out and optimize it. We're scrappy, right? That's a lot of times not these people. So they look at their projections inside of their spreadsheets of like what should happen based on growth, but they don't actually know how to pull the levers of growth once they have the asset. Great when it comes to M&A structuring, often terrible when it comes to operations. But this was all kind of like thrown underneath the rug because of the grand hype that was happening during 2021 or 2022, the end of 2021, which COVID happened, right? The pandemic happened. Everyone started shopping online. I have so many friends, they got huge paycheck increases because of this COVID bump of everyone literally being forced to shop online. So you could buy these businesses even at a high multiple, and you're going to do well with like capturing all that growth that's coming on, right? Like I have friends in the affiliate space, for example, at the start of the pandemic. Amazon cut their commissions. They're like, "Wow, thanks, Amazon.
Yeah,
Great time to do
jerks.
this for
Come
me."
on.
But yeah, but they actually made more money because their traffic skyrocketed with the the this huge new cohorts of people coming and shopping online. So basically, in the last 2 years, we've seen like trends everyone knew, like anyone that's in e-commerce or marketing already knew. that were going to come in like say 10 to 15 years happen in about a year and a half, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of those people are not going back to shopping physically, but some are, which will lead into my next point. But so you get all this hype that's going on, all this money flowing into the space. It just looks like win, 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 and it starts becoming kind of like selling swampland in Florida. Like it always goes up, right? Like, well, for a bit.
Yeah.
So
Until it's not
yeah,
sustainable anymore.
right, exactly. So I think what a lot where we're at right now is a lot of the aggregators are feeling the pinch of like, man, this business is not matching the spreadsheet that I worked out, and they're coming to that grim realization that maybe they aren't the best operators. Not all of them, like I said. There's definitely aggregators, really good operators, but a lot of them are not that. Like you mentioned with Razor, I know a few others that are selling off their assets right now as well, very quietly, because like in the private equity world, like your reputation is kind of like a big thing to get the next raise, right? So they probably don't want to be shouting about it from the rooftop.
Right. So a couple questions lead me to there. This obviously doesn't affect you at Empire Flippers too terribly much because you guys you're not doing the buying or the selling. You're doing the selling of the assets. You're not hand holding, like you're not taking the goods and you have to make them do all the tricks and things like that. You're not making them perform. You guys are doing the buying and selling. So you guys are probably seeing a downtick, if it's fair, in that realm, probably not in the other realms in that capacity. Am I right, or is it kind of like steady?
For
Or
sure. Yeah. So with us in particular, like you're right. We don't operate the businesses we sell, right? Because we're a broker at the end of the day,
of
M&A
course,
advisor, right? So we sell it to people who will operate it. Now, with what's going on in the industry, and there's more than just what I just said. I can go into deeper, but what with what's happening with aggregators putting this pause of them hitting the brakes a bit, like, whoa, let's slow down here and see if we can't recoup what we have, that does lead to less buyers, right? And that affects
sure.
our marketplace. So at least especially in the 7-figure and up range, because that's where most ags are, purchasing and acquiring. So that does lead to tougher deals, like tougher conditions for a seller to sell a business in. Which is why I pitched this idea at the end of the season of the seller, because the last 2 years has been the best sellers market I've ever seen, like ever. Before that, all those years before that was more of a buyer's market because no one really knew about this stuff.
Right.
So they weren't like bloated or anything in multiples. It was a great time for a buyer. And I think now we're at the very tail end of that season of the seller and dipping more towards the buyer season. We're not there yet, but we're probably going to dip into like this kind of neutral zone. And then things might dip more towards the buyer over the coming months.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. And I never want any of these businesses to fail. And again, you saw like kind of stark differences. Believe it or not, after we had a month or two later after on this podcast, I had Suma Brains on here. And that was the big turning point for I
Mm.
think a lot of people or friends in the space of people like, oh my gosh, they just raised $150 million, but then now they're laying off 60-ish
Yeah.
percent, something like that. And I felt bad. And I was like, of course that was going to happen. But then you feel better, like, well, those are people out that like maybe there's a miscalculation or something like that. What what's the reason you think that people are having to like is it reconfigure the model? You said the spreadsheets don't add up. Is it that they just overbuy, or that inventory doesn't match up, or what's the big component that people are like, we made a big mistake and like fix our mess, or somebody come fix our mess, or like we're held with
Please.
like stuff that yeah somebody, I don't know what to do now, like something has to point to a lot of these different radio silences. Is it just like they bought one bad apple and it's kind of like really set them back, or what are you hearing
Yeah.
on that end?
Yeah, so I think it's a confluence of events, like most things, right? Is usually not one thing that kills you. It's usually death by a thousand cuts. Though there is a theme to the cuts, and this happens even with bootstrapped entrepreneurs, in my view, and that is purely just an obsession with growth. Like growth, I think, is the great fool's quest of an entrepreneur because it's something everyone wants. Sounds amazing, but you don't know what you have to give to get it, and often when you do get it, like yeah, your revenues through the roof, but your profits are through the basement because of what you had to do to get the revenue up, right? So growth is often this double-edged sword. So I think what the confluence of events that are happening here is aggregators, some bad apples, like what you said, like sometimes they just bought bad businesses. That happens, right? Others is bad operations, bloated PPC. Now there's the supply chain crisis, which I think is going to be deepening over the next few months rather than getting better. Like before, a few months ago when I was on podcast, I said, barring another black swan event, I think supply chain is going to be fixed, probably in like within the year or something like that. But then we have another black swan event with what's happening in Ukraine, the shutdowns in Shanghai. So I was wrong on
It's
that front.
okay.
I think things are probably going to get
We
worse
didn't have
there.
money on that, so it's okay.
No, yeah, yeah. I only make bets with $0.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so there's all these confluence of events that are circling them, and they are also buying at high multiples while prices are rising up, PVC costs are rising up, more competition in the space. And now COVID, at least in the West and most of the world, is starting to recede. So now we're seeing retail coming back. Like you look at some of the traffic stats on Amazon and Shopify, and even my friends with the affiliate sites, it's way down from what it used to be because people are now going outside again, which is something we figure would happen. That there would be this drop off, but the drop off won't drop from like back to 2019 levels. It's still going to be significantly higher, but you will see a drop off, right? As people like go back to quote unquote a more normal life. So it's all those events compiled with some bad decisions, wanting to go hard at growth, and the more money you raise, like often the less freedom you have to move because now you have to appeal to all these investors and like do things that bootstrap entrepreneurs simply can't do because you have to meet those investment mandates.
That's what I was going to say, and I think it would be a good way to kind of bring some, Professor Gregory in here on here. A lot of people are when you're a seller and you're new to the space and you're listening to this podcast, a lot of people just don't understand the concept of, oh, they're raising this money, and then that's kind of where the mindset stops. A lot of people, and I had to do my own education. I said, wait a minute, like makes sense. They're using a lot of different terms in here that maybe not just the for capital for raises for towards equity and towards debt. And I think those are the two major components that we never distinguish the two. Money towards debt is money towards debt, and correct me if I'm wrong, is going towards the business itself. Or money towards equity is towards the business itself. Excuse me, a reset. Money towards equity toward the company is like a part of the company. So if of 100% of the company, they put a certain amount and they're buying like essentially shares of the company and they own equity
Right.
within it. So as that company grows, they earn more money long term. So they're kind of like giving them a loan because of that, and that's the trade off. Money towards debt is, hey, I am a bank at a probably good rate, essentially private equity. I will loan you this money if you need to borrow it from me at a good rate, and then you pay me back at a good, a good investment timeline. I tell people that, and I think a lot of people are like, why are they failing now? Why can't they just figure it out, write it out with all this money they have cash or like in their vaults, or like Scrooge McDuck in their vault basements or whatever it is. They're diving into it. If they have it all around, why can't they just wait it out, or they kind of tweak stuff and then kind of get back onto that cycle like they were? It's because of the terms that they are borrowing money, correct? Like they have to pay it back at certain junctures, or they quote unquote are defaulting on a loan. Did I explain that correctly, or is that what's happening to a lot of people? If they just haven't gotten enough profit back to pay off the debt that they are borrowing from these companies.
Yeah, I mean that's a good like overview of what's happening now. There's things they can do like restructuring the debt,
Sure.
which can help. It can also make things worse because it could add more debt on top of it, right? Even with the lower interest rates. But
Sure.
yeah, like one of the things too, like I mentioned, like if someone gives you money, whether it's debt or equity, in terms of how they're giving you the money, like say as a private equity firm or family office, well, they're going to have mandates, and like so it's not also just simply like paying them back, but also having to do what the mandate tells them to do. So
Right.
which I think has also caused some of this issues. So for example, some of the mandates that the aggregators get is like you will buy X amount of brands per month, and like okay, I mean that sounds good on paper, but when if X amount of brands ends up me buying three really bad brands, and one good brand, but I have to buy four. I can
Yeah.
only use this money for that. Like, so these are some of these stipulations that I think probably hurt some of the aggregators as well.
So looking at all of this, I know you didn't want people to succeed because obviously Empire Flippers works with these companies. What are people looking for now? Like, has it become more? Has it become more? It's not just like, hey, if you have a pull, someone will buy you. Like you said, these mandates are pretty like broad. Of like, hey, if you were willing to sell, we'll take your company and we'll figure it out as we go. Are people getting more strategic? Like, what are they looking for? Like, what if I'm a brand? I'm like, I mean, I would like to sell my business, but I don't know what are these next criteria coming down the pipeline that I need to prepare my brand for. What are successful aggregators looking for now?
Sure. And like all this doom and gloom that we're talking about in this podcast, like aggregators are still buying, right? Like there are
Right.
still people out there buying businesses. I do think that there will be a trend that we see. We might not see it fully play out this year, but I think long term we'll see it where entrepreneurs will start raising money themselves to go buy businesses from various different financial platforms. So you start seeing bootstrap entrepreneurs kind of get
Yeah.
into the game more. But yeah, in terms of what a seller can do, focusing on quality is number one thing, and that's always true, whether you're in buyers or sellers market, whatever. But having good diversity of traffic, diversity of products, diversity of revenue, having tons of reviews, 4-star and up reviews, having an email list, like which a lot of FBA owners sleep on. I think email is incredibly important because you're taking the rented land that you're living on inside of Amazon and building a little bit of your own land that you can use to go launch something off Amazon down the road, right? So these are some of the stuff people will be looking for. Real brands, not things are like in the Wild West days where people just were like, I sell a camera and water bottles. Like that's my brand, that shotgun approach I think is like dying off a lot in FBA, and most buyers, especially at the high end, don't like to see that as much. They like to see products that are synergistically aligned, that they have the same theme, that they support and build into each other, right? Because most aggregators, they like most buy on FBA, but most of them do not want to stay on Amazon. At the end of the day, they want to grow and to become the new Procter and Gamble, right? And
Of course.
Procter and Gamble, they sell on Amazon, but they also sell on dozens of different channels, right?
Yep. Omni-channel versus and also their own websites. They also sell in retail.
Yep.
I think I think this is also like this reckoning period of like maybe it came too quickly. Like maybe they were forced to like have to move with step or phase 4 or 5 too quickly, where they're still building out teams, they're figuring out their way. Amazon, for lack of a better term, is the most simplistic, I say, in the world of starting a business. It's probably the easiest way to get going. Now, to be successful, it's difficult. Now, there's all these different iterations of how to be successful in different categories and products and so on and so forth. But to start, and I've asked people this just off air and blankly, I go, well, aren't you guys getting into direct to consumership, or one's the play to retail, or one's the play to like all these ways? I call them 3 pillars: the Amazon, in the Amazon, the direct to consumer slash channel, the retail, and then that kind of omni channel approach. So like those D2C, Amazon slash marketplace channel, and then retail. Companies that have been successful do that. I always say it, and I will constantly say it, the Zesty Paws of started on Amazon, they went to retail, and they're like in PetSmart, Walmart, Target, all these different places, and had their own website. And guess what, guys? They got bought for $650+ million, and that was the valuation of a brand because they had all these pillars in place. Stuff like that, where I think like every aggregator wants to get to. So why? So what is this? Is this the movement towards those places, or is it still going to be more mainly focused on Amazon? You think?
So I think the less experienced aggregators will probably stick with Amazon. I think the smart aggregators who want to go and do the full vision of what most of
Mhm.
them want to do will probably start buying DTC e-commerce businesses instead of Amazon. And the reason why I say that is because, like, I agree with you, by the way. I think starting a business on Amazon is way easier than, say, starting a Shopify store. But when it comes to the conversion, so if you're buying a
Right.
business, you already know it makes money, right? It is a proven market fit
Yep.
based on the P&Ls. At least it should be if you're buying
Yeah.
it.
If you're
So if
smart.
you buy a, you're right. So if you're buying a DTC Shopify store, say selling that camera or blender or whatever, it's usually a lot easier to transfer that product into Amazon's ecosystem than transferring Amazon product into the Shopify ecosystem, because this is harder over here. So this is much harder to get your funnels working correctly. There's a lot more technology set up, conversion stuff that goes on in the background, all that kind of stuff. So we've seen aggregators buy Shopify stores from us specifically so they can take them on to Amazon, and so now they have two channels in there. And to your point about going to actual stores, like retail stores, absolutely. We're seeing more and more people doing that. In fact, there was I forget which aggregator it was now, but it was a pretty big purchase. They bought a business that specifically has all the distribution channels for retail, so they can like usher in all their products into that.
Which is really cool and fascinating because, again, we were talking about this pre-show. Like my background, our company, Evergreen Enterprise, is still in existence, and today, they really taught me the value of, hey, get your distribution channels in place correct, because they were manufacturing and distributing from Ningbo, China. Our distribution and facility was in Richmond, Virginia. So from there we were selling to retail stores and things like that, and that's where the bread and butter came. But then e-commerce came in 2014, 15, 16. FBA became really important, but we were still selling to like Fanatics, we were selling to QVC, Wayfair, Home Depot, all these things where a multi-million-dollar business started to get really, really like omni-channel, which is really cool and a really big puzzle. There was hundreds of employees that I only had 5. Like me myself was in charge of like affiliate marketing for one channel, for 2 websites, and it was a 7-figure business for 2 websites, just myself. And then we had a PPC person as well for that channel, and then email. That's it. Like, so we had that on top of this like 100-person team for like wholesalers and salespeople in the field, people who had key accounts to like a QVC and things like that. But then you were ordering products like a year in advance, and you started to have the cycle process. That's why I think like businesses are striving to, but it's so hard to understand like the experiences that come from each of those segments. And it's just like a constant evolution education process of, like I said, Amazon is now rolling out this functionality of, we're going to be talking about this on Friday on the podcast. I'm excited about, is kind of this, hey, you can buy with Prime and get fulfilled on your D2C website through Prime. And it's like this whole bringing back the whole almost like the third party channel of fulfillment, the multi merchant fulfilled network, is what we'll talk
Oh
about. So I'm
yeah,
excited
yeah.
to like, so that play into D2C also for people who just can't figure out like their own warehousing and stuff like that. So all these different plays of, it's going to be evolving, and what's going to be easy for your business and how you're set up. I know people are, in the aggregator space, are constantly looking at, hey, we want sourcing logistics to be unlocked. We want there to be a warehouse or something tied to it where we can just store goods and we don't have to worry about like last second ordering or not getting goods in time. A lot of these things are now more valuable than just the listing on Amazon as like the top rank or anything like that. So where's this go from here, Gregory? Like, what's kind of like, if I'm a seller and I listen to this, I'm like, shoot, I missed my shot. Like, I missed my chance. Like, maybe it's another 2 years from now we'll get an opportunity to like get to a multiple. Or what are your advices for people who are trying to exit their business now?
Sure. So, how you said, there's actually a question I get asked in multiple different ways, and it usually comes down to like, how do I time the market for the best exit, right?
Sure.
And people ask me that all the time, and I tell people like, look, the best way to time the market is based on your personal and business goals, which sounds like, woo woo
100%.
whatever, but like the issue with timing the market is like, I have so many friends who tried to do that. I have a friend. He had I think it was like I always mess up the numbers, but I'll get them generally correct. There is like a $450,000 business, something like that. And he knew if he spent like 3, 4 months fixing this certain thing in the side of the business, he could sell it for an extra 10%. And he got that from a data report I publish based on the research I did on our marketplace. Things that had this trait got an extra 10% lift. And so he did that. But what happened, and his was driven by Google SEO traffic. So Google had an algorithm update during that, tanked his whole business. His business went from being worth like 430K to right around, I think, 180, 190K, something like that.
Oh man.
And so, like, was that like that timing worth that 10%? Like, which one would you have been happier with? Getting that extra 10% or not losing like $400,000, right? Or
Sure.
$300,000, whatever it was. Obviously, like, he doesn't want that one, but that's what he ended up getting. So I always tell entrepreneurs, be careful on trying to time the market. Instead, seriously ask yourself, like, all right, what are my personal goals here? Like, what do I want? Do I want more time, travel the world, whatever, right? And then what are your business goals, your financial goals? Like, what are you seeking to get? If your goal is like $1 million, or like $2 million in the bank, whatever it might be, right? Ask yourself, does selling my business right now get me significantly closer to that goal? If the answer is yes, consider selling. If the answer is no, then hold off, right? And even if multiples do go down, it's not the end of the world, because at the end of the day, like, even before aggregators came about, people were still getting 2 to sometimes 4 years of their net profit up, like, for their business, right? It's only recently things went like really
8, 9,
skyrocketing with the
yeah.
aggregator demand, right? Which those are tech valuations. And I think that will probably end because these aren't tech businesses. I think that's another painful lesson the aggregators are learning, that they're not Silicon Valley tech businesses like SaaS businesses.
Right.
But at the end of the day, building a multi-million-dollar business, even where you exit for say a 3 4x, that's huge, right? Like, you are cashing out a massive equity. You built a system of leverage that you normally cannot do as an employee. You built a machine of income, of scalable income, that you can cash out. So I wouldn't like let like end this podcast on like doom and gloom for the seller, like, oh
Right.
god,
Yeah.
I missed
Let's
out,
talk
never
about the
going to be
good
able to
stuff. Yeah.
sell. So like, the opportunity is still there. You'll still be able to sell. And I do think selling your business, in my view, is really the start of your business, because once you sell your business, you get all this liquidity that has been tied up in that business for so long. And as you know, with FBA, that's a lot of capital intensive
Yep.
work and of that hamster wheel of success, right? That it opens up when you do get that capital, even if it's say a 4x instead of this like a crazy 8x or whatever, like, that's still life-changing money, and you can now make moves you never even knew existed because you sold that business. So that's what I would say. Like, don't worry about it too much. Think more about your personal and business goals.
Absolutely. And this is something that, we had on the podcast, which was really cool. His company, he's in Canada. I'm gonna pull up his name real quick. If you go back to episode, for everyone who's listening to this, if you went to episode 234 of our podcast on YouTube, or when it gets released audio wise, we had All Natural Advice on, and he, as part of his exit, was part of he was the number one seller in wellness products in Canada. Again, very random, very, very. That's where he lived, but he had been a banker for 25 years. It was just an amazing story. But he got into Amazon at the beginning of this kind of process, and he started figuring out he had a couple partner. He had a partner or two. Then exited to one of the top retail based businesses that are trying to get in Amazon and whatnot. They bought the business, but they bought him and his expertise as well. And I think that was really kind of the cool, where a lot of the successful businesses are kind of marrying the two of, you need the expertise along with the asset that you have built, because you understand the ecosystem, you understand the what it takes to get this, the supply chain, the whether it be local or international supply chain system in place. And then you also get equity within the company, so you can now build it something larger. Like, hey, you get your nice little payout there, but you also get some equity in the company long term. So I think that's really cool concept. Never used to happen on kind of a prove it concept. You used to have to work your way through before you get equity into any sort of company. But the fact that you're building out a product, now you become sort of an asset based entity, but now you're getting equity within how that brand does and how the company overall does as a publicly traded company. That's it's a mind crazy blowing thing that where it's all of a sudden become possible. And now we're talking about agencies that are being sold, like advertising agencies for aggregators or P&E companies to run brands. You're talking about SaaS companies that are now getting rolled up. All these things that have become instantly more valuable. You work in the affiliate world and all these things. Is there another place that you're keeping your eye on that hasn't yet had its like shoulder tapped and hey, you're next? Like this is the space that we need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, with affiliates, so there are affiliate site aggregators. They're rare, but I do see them now and again. One that is very weird is there's KDP aggregators. I think there's like one or two of them that
What
will
is
buy those
that, by
kind of
the way?
businesses.
KDP.
Yeah, sorry, I probably should
You're
explain this.
fine.
I'm a writer, so I love KDP. It's the Kindle publishing program.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So if you want to self-publish on Amazon, it's basically almost like the business model is like a modern day publishing company
Yeah.
for books, basically, right?
Sure.
So you're seeing some of them starting to pop up. In terms of like new stuff, new business models, I haven't say I've seen like something new that's really catching my attention lately. I think there is a interesting play for someone who can tap into the creator economy that's coming on at scale. So like what we used to call influencers, now we're calling it the creator economy.
Sure.
But if you're able to tap into kind of that new media, kind of like what the Hustle and Morning Brew have been able to do with their newsletters, I think you can win big in a lot of ways as well. But
That's cool.
yeah, like we live in an amazing time. Like you able to create equity into something like what you were just talking about. Like so many of those opportunities exist when you dive deep into business, internet marketing, selling a business to have like such huge amount of liquidity. It's an amazing time.
Yeah. Do you guys do software tools as well? Like, are you brokering software tools like SaaS? Okay. Yeah, we
Yeah.
had on Carbon 6 recently, and they came out of stealth. I'm not sure if you've met or got ingrained with them, but such a cool, interesting model, which I've kind of always thought, being from SaaS, and if watch the space grow, I was like kind of waiting. I was like, when is somebody going to come along and just start saying like, listen, you do really good at this, you do good at this, let's marry it and like become an aggregator of that. So the concept of what they're doing in both the Amazon, not just on private label, but it's on wholesale, publishing, kind of hitting all the roads of Amazon and what that looks like. And then I'm assuming e-commerce is at the forefront too, which is fascinating to kind of watch that kind of be an ecosystem to keep an eye on too. But so what about with Empire Flippers? How like what's kind of the 2022 goals? You mentioned like, hey, I made these projections. Stuff happened in the world that we have no control over. What's kind of the roadmap for you guys? You guys have grown to like 90 plus employees. You guys are growing phenomenally. It's really cool to see you guys speaking out affiliate world, which again, affiliates in my blood. So I always love when affiliate kind of comes to the forefront and said, I knew it. I knew I got into the right space at one juncture and it was going to have its moment. I always love that and that component. But what's on the roadmap for you, Gregory, here in 2022 and then Empire Flippers?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, affiliate world, I think kind of similar to you. Like, I've always really looked up to those guys. Like, I think they're the woman and the men who speak on the stage. I think there's like some of the absolute best internet marketers I've ever met. And it was funny. So when I spoke on the stage, I said that, and then I also said, "You're also some of the worst business people I've ever met," which is true. Like they just like go crazy with these ads and like the affiliate conversions, but they often struggle to build like crazy big businesses, even though they have this amazing talent. But it was such an honor to speak there. But yeah, so I'm actually going to be in Barcelona in July, Barcelona, Spain, speaking on another affiliate world event.
Oh,
So
cool.
in terms of like other stuff, I was away from home, away from Vietnam for like 6 months traveling. So mainly going to be here and just like hanging out, working.
Chill out there. Yeah,
But
that's good.
yeah, like relax. Finally, I'm home. But in terms of EF, I think what we're going to see is us helping a lot more entrepreneurs become acquirers, and a lot of first-time entrepreneurs enter into entrepreneurship through acquisition. So that's something I'm very excited for. And I think like depends on the supply chain, but I would love to see more DDC e-commerce businesses starting to show up on our marketplace because I think that's like we have such a huge buyer network for e-commerce in general. Like I said, the aggregators are looking for them. Like our our buyer network just passed over like $6 billion. So like I think that's
Wow.
a very untapped market for us because we used to be well known in DDC a little bit, but then Shopify took down all my guest posts I wrote for them when they launched their exchange. So they
Those
just like
jerks.
converted it to their exchange. But yeah, that's what I'm excited about. We're also reworking our SaaS positioning to work on our SaaS valuations to try to attract more of that to the marketplace. So a bunch of different cool stuff going on.
That's awesome. And then quickly, if you're able to, people might like, hey, how does Empire Flippers, how do they help people? Is it percentage of sale, or like can anyone sign up? Like how does that work? If they want to learn more information about that, they just go to your website. What if they have those questions?
Sure. So how EF gets paid is by the seller. So we get paid a commission on the successful sale of the business. So if you go to empireflippers.com/fees, we have a blended rate and you can see what the commission rate is from there. In terms of what your valuation might be, just Google Empire Flippers valuation tool and you'll be able to play around with that. It takes like all of 2 minutes to do, and it's based on real sales data, not listing price data. So you'll see what we think, very guesstimate of what your business might be worth with that. But yeah, empireflippers.com. And yeah, if people want to connect with me, it's just LinkedIn and Facebook.
LinkedIn, Facebook, got it. Well, we make sure we linked it out here, and I'm putting it in the comments section. For people who don't know, they should. If you have a middle website, it's really cool. It's actually, for me, I'm like, it's a treasure trove of little tools and little bits of information that I always love poking around in there. So if you haven't checked it out, just kind of weaponize yourself with information and data. I always tell people, if you have data at your fingertips, utilize it as much as possible. So, but yeah, great stuff you guys are doing over there. I think it's pretty cool and fascinating. I think it's one of the concepts of, hey, how do we help other people grow and how other businesses, reach their potential and their goals, which it's always reassuring to hear of, hey, if you think, if whatever your goal is, stick to that goal. Like don't be greedy. I mean, like, you hate to tell entrepreneurs not to be greedy because at the core of it, you're like, oh yeah, there's more I could do, but like walking away is like,
There's so much more. Yeah, the
right. There's
growth
more.
curve.
There's like, if I do one more thing, I can get another nickel. No, just stop. It's like that's why I don't gamble. Is like because there is more you could do. But that's another story for another time. So you're traveling, you're going to Barcelona. That's the next event you're going to be at. Are there any other events you have on your radar that you might be speaking at?
Not yet. So we'll see what happens. I have a lot of work to do in terms of the SEO, the website I would like to accomplish. So
Like, come on, boss,
we'll
leave me
see.
alone, please.
Uh,
Just let me work.
it, if any conference owners out there are listening and they want to invite me to speak, happy to talk. Of course, I genuinely enjoy speaking on stage and like connecting with entrepreneurs. So I like to say yes to those events when I can.
Awesome. Hey man, well you've been so helpful and thoughtful with your time here today. Thank you so much for coming on Crossover Commerce. And again, the best way to do that is connect with you on LinkedIn or Facebook as well. So Gregory, thank you so much for hopping on Crossover Commerce today and sharing some of your valuable time and resources. I know it's nighttime for you, so I don't know if you're up for the day or if you're about ready to go sleep, but hey man,
The
it's
joke
a
is I
pleasure.
never sleep.
Hey, same here. I don't know when I get any work done, or it's just always constant stuff like this, which I love. And but yeah, sleep is secondary to that. So thank you so much for hopping on Crossover Conversation. I call people friends of the
Thank
show
you.
now. So now, anytime you're welcome back, feel free to hop on again.
Awesome. Yeah, let's stay in touch.
Awesome. Thanks, Gregory. And thank you everyone else for hopping on Crossover Commerce today. Just a quick shout out. You saw in this little screen below. We've been featuring, Crossover Commerce is actually a media sponsor of sourcing of the Mexico trip. It's pretty easy. Go to themexicotrip.com /webinar. There is a great webinar that's happening this Wednesday, but you need to go to the website to sign up for free to hear why it's important to take a look at the option of sourcing in a different country, maybe not China. We've talked about India before. Look at Mexico as an opportunity. Get your questions answered from leaders in the space. Norm Farrar, Amy Weiss, Tim Jordan are putting on an amazing in-person event, but they're doing a free webinar to answer your questions. Go below, check that out. And the link, it's in the show notes where you can still have time to sign up. I'll be posting about it here on LinkedIn today. So make sure you grab a space to hear all the great tidbits of information that they have going on as well. That being said, thank you, Gregory, from Empire Flippers and all the people who were listening and tuning in today. If you didn't get a chance to, I know we had a couple issues, I think a hiccup on LinkedIn. So if you were watching this typically on LinkedIn, I posted the YouTube video where you can rewatch the episode, but otherwise look for the audio version coming out here shortly on all your favorite podcast destinations. But in the meantime, I'm Ryan Kramer for Crossover Commerce. Make sure you guys take care. Again, episode 3 more episodes this week. But we'll catch you guys next time on another episode of Crossover Commerce. Take care.